Episode 1: Why we don't talk about the elephant. Hi everyone and welcome to our new podcast. Today we are diving into a topic that many of us can relate to, but few of us dare to talk about. Our elephants. You know, those massive, strange and sometimes terrifying creatures that show up uninvited in the story of our lives. You might be wondering, what do elephants have to do with anything? Well, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine this. You are heading to the supermarket to grab some bread, potatoes, milk, butter, or whatever. You've done this 100 times before, maybe even 1,000. You know where the bread is, the potatoes. It's a routine. You're probably not thinking much about it. In fact, when nothing unusual happens, you might not even remember the trip later. That's because our brains don't need to store every ordinary detail. Just to simplify, they use two systems to process information. The automatic system, kind of like autopilot, and the more effortful, conscious system. If nothing out of ordinary happens, autopilot takes over and life moves on. Now imagine, you walk into the vegetable section and there's an elephant. Not a massive one, but big enough. Just hanging out, playing with the vegetables. It's tossing lettuce in the air, knocking over carrots, or maybe eating apples. People are having fun. They like it. What do? Do you take a picture? A video? Maybe a selfie? Do you immediately text your best friend? Or perhaps post it on TikTok with some really interesting caption? Why? Because this is unusual. Your brain needs to process it, to understand it, to figure out how an elephant ended up in the middle of your local supermarket. You might even want to learn more. For example, Google random elephants in supermarkets, or call someone to share the story. Now imagine that elephant is in a quirky supermarket moment. Imagine that elephant is your trauma. A moment in your life that was shocking, unexpected, and overwhelming. But instead of wanting to process it, to talk about it, to understand it, you decide to avoid it. Probably most of us would. Maybe you think, I don't need to look at it. I'll just shove it in a box, lock it up, and move on. But your brain doesn't work like that. And once again, to simplify, it wants to process the elephant. It needs to understand it. And when you don't let it, the elephant doesn't just sit quietly in that box. It starts to leak out. Flashbacks, nightmares, panic attacks. Your brain is trying to help you make sense of the event, to file it away so it doesn't hurt so much when the memory pops up. It's like putting that elephant in a photo album. The picture will always be there, but when it's processed, it won't feel like the elephant is standing on your chest every time you looked at it. Let me share a personal story about my elephant. Not long ago, there were 2 fires in my apartment building within 10 months. The first one happened in May. I had to evacuate, leaving my home behind, of course with my cats. I spent a few months in a temporary apartment. During this time, I was in unbearable pain. Eventually, I had surgery on my spine and the relief was incredible. But then I came home and a few months later, it happened again. My friend was visiting me and we joked a lot on the balcony and we saw fire trucks. And my friend said, wouldn't it be funny if they were coming to your building? I said, no, that's not funny. There are a lot of fires in the district, but it doesn't happen twice, right? But they were. I remember the anxiety building as the fire trucks got closer and closer. When I finally saw them stop at my building, I froze. For a few minutes, I was just standing. Then my body went into autopilot. I packed my cat, my documents, and myself. I sat on the sofa, unable to do much else. During this time, my friend was panicking. It was her first fire. I don't remember much. When the firefighters arrived to my apartment, the smoke was already thick in one of my rooms. They gave instructions and I followed them. I put the wet towel in the window filter. I closed the room, another towel under the door, and went to living room and sat again on my sofa. From outside, one could say that I was very calm, but inside, I was breaking. My asthma flared, the anxiety was overwhelming, I froze. After hours of waiting, we were evacuated to a hotel. And days later, I was in yet another temporary apartment, of course with my cat. It didn't end there. The stress, another surgery, the panic attacks, the elephant was enormous. And every time I hear a fire alarm now, my body reacts. During a recent stay in a clinic, they tested the fire alarms. And I had a full-blown panic attack. This is my elephant. And I'm still processing it. And that's the thing about elephants. They don't just disappear when we ignore them. They stay with us, in our minds, in our bodies, waiting for us to process them. When I described the elephant to my friend, she said, "But I talk about my trauma all the time to anyone who will listen." But when I asked her if she felt anything when she told her story, she paused. She realized that for her, the story had become numb, like reading a book written by someone else. To truly process our elephants, we have to feel them, even when it hurts. So, what's your elephant? What's the story you've been avoiding? The photo you've been too afraid to look at? Remember, processing doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Whether it's through therapy, talking with someone you trust, or even just acknowledging the elephant exists, you are taking the first step. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Let's Talk About the Elephant. And if this resonates with you, please share it with someone who may need to hear it. And remember, acknowledging that the elephant exists is the first step to healing. Until the next time, take care of yourself and each other.